Thank you for joining us for another episode of Word Up with Dani Katz. Today, it is my pleasure and honor to be joined by MD, forensic psychiatrist, public speaker, inventor, documentary producer, truth teller extraordinaire, Dr. Andrew Kaufman. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciated you and I connected very early on during the pandemic. I believe it was March of 2020, and kind of were helping me clear up some things and get clear on some of the sciences when I was doing some research for a documentary. And I really appreciated how open and generous you were with your time. So I definitely wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your path. I know you've been on so many shows and talking about terrain theory and helping bring the public up to speed on the science. I'm curious to know about your path and your background. Were you always kind of speaking against consensus reality? Were you always poking at fictions pervading the medical space?
No, not at all. In fact, you know, there was the sort of spark of that type of outlook that was always in me because I always wanted to understand things at the system level, right? So I was never kind of satisfied to just take this little bit of isolated information and just accept it as is. I wanted to know, where did it come from? What's the context? What's the organizational structure?
Mhm.
So as I was pursuing my interest in medicine and healing and biology and developing that career, and I had sort of a convoluted path because I did a number of things before I ultimately went to medical school. I learned more and more through my experience. So I experienced something like, for example, when I was right before I went to medical school, I was a physician assistant and I worked in hematology and oncology. And in the hospital where I was, the drug representatives were very influential. Like, they were cool young people, good-looking people. They, invited us out to meals all the time. They paid for drinks, and it was that kind of thing. And I was a bit naive to the social reciprocity and how that can influence doctors' prescribing practices and such. But then I saw evidence of that. Like, there was this one really popular guy, and he represented this drug Trovan, which was an antibiotic, and I saw everyone prescribing it left and right. And it turns out that that was actually the drug that they had tested illegally in Africa, and it caused a bunch of deaths. And this is all, you can find this in mainstream media headlines if you want to investigate it further. But that was, the drug they were promoting at the time. So as I got a little bit experience, and at first I kind of, I went to the dinners and I got free meals. I even did one talk I was paid by a drug company. And this is what really started me waking up in that respect, because I put all this work in to develop my own presentation on the topic, and it was about a disease called anemia of chronic disease, which people with kidney failure and other ailments develop chronic anemia. And I wanted to just present the whole topic. But of course, the company made a specific drug that you could be used for that. And of course, I would teach about that because it did work, at least as they stated, right? But right before the talk, the drug rep sent me a set of slides and wanted me to deliver those slides, which were marketing material. And so that kind of led me to look at the issue. And then I realized how influential it was, and that other people started realizing it too, and there were reforms in the pharmaceutical industry. But I kind of had a series of experiences like that during my medical training and various career interim careers that I was in over the years. So I realized that people didn't get better from chemotherapy, but it made them worse, or even blood transfusions, for example. In psychiatry, of course, I realized that psychiatric medications were effective, and even the training that I got at Duke, we analyzed journal articles and clinical trials, and we all reached those conclusions. And then I saw the hypocrisy because, on the one hand, we're meeting and criticizing and saying antidepressants don't really work, but then we go into the clinic and everyone's telling us to prescribe antidepressants. So, so it was a, a series of things like that that led me to slowly back out of the system. And then in other areas of my life, certain personal events led me to inquire about things and question things. Like I had, my when my brother died, for example, and there were some other things that happened around that that really led me to say, okay, I'm gonna, because I had a friend who was influential, and he was telling me that the climate change narrative wasn't really accurate, and that it was kind of really going against the good nature of human beings. And I was very skeptical because I was like, had been a climate activist for 20 years, since college, because I had a genuine concern. I wanted nature to be preserved and not poisoned.
Right.
But of course, I was led to the incorrect belief that it was carbon dioxide was the cause of the demise of nature, when really it's all of the, chemicals and radiation that's being spread carelessly around. So when I got to that point, I said, all right, I'm going to research this in earnest, and I'm going to prove my friend wrong. I'm going to show him that climate change is real. And I was astonished. It really shook me up because I not only did I come to the opposite conclusion, but I actually couldn't find one shred of credible scientific evidence. There was computer modeling, but that's not scientific. I had actually earlier in my career done computer modeling for drug design, and I knew that it could easily be tweaked to show anything.
Right.
You could show that table salt will, cure diabetes with molecular modeling. So once I had that kind of overhaul, and then I branched out to researching other areas, and including medicine, in a different way. And that's what really turned me around to start questioning everything. And, I've gone deep down the rabbit hole in many, many areas, and have learned that most, if not all, of the narratives, theories, and paradigms that we are indoctrinated with from our childhood and throughout our lives, through our culture and our compulsory schooling system, that they're almost all false.